Hello and welcome back to our Change interview series. Today, my guest is Lidia Kuleshnyk, or Lady Apona. She's located in Ontario in Canada, and we have connected through a book collaboration called Evolving on Purpose, Co-Creating with the Divine. And we have both written chapters in that, and her chapter is called The Divinity of Horses, on which we'll hear a bit more in this interview today. And our interview series is about people who have faced or have made major life changes, and it's meant to inspire people who are in a similar situation. And Lydia, I have, as I understand it, I have heard you are now running a horse sanctuary, the aponahealingranch, and you are also a coach and a healer. And you are also combining both aspects of your work. And as I understood it, you also went through a major life change that prompted you to go onto this path. And I think you called it, you were in a cocoon of healing, and you were healing from lifelong chronic illnesses. And something happened and brought you to your current line of work. And so I would just ask you to outline briefly for us what you're doing right now.
Well, thank you so much. It's such an honor and pleasure to be on your show and to be sharing this incredible book we've written together and our fellow co-authors. It's launching on August 30th on Amazon, and so we're both very excited to share our chapters and our wisdom. And I started back in the healing arts as a result of dreams that I had when I was in my cocoon of healing. I had a previous career as an international environmental policy analyst, specializing in climate change back when nobody knew anything about climate change or anything involved with really international environmental affairs. And I'm also a trained mental health therapist. But I had been diagnosed, the problem was I had not been diagnosed properly, but I had been living with serious chronic illnesses from birth that, again, were difficult to diagnose. I was born with deformed organs that resulted in quite serious digestive and endocrine disorders that really affected me more on the physical level. And I always had the mental clarity and emotional strength to know that I would heal and continue on my healing path. So I was really dedicated to my own personal healing and growth right from the age of 10, when I read The Power of Positive Thinking from Norman Vincent Peale, the writer, the author. And I also had other books that inspired me, like the Little House on the Prairie books and the Lord of the Rings books. And that's why I love books so much. And I love the opportunity to be able to collaborate in multi-author book projects, because we can really share, as you're saying, our personal stories and the tools that we used to overcome challenges. So my journey began around the age of 10, and then I went through life struggling with these chronic illnesses, but always guided by dreams, which is our book, Co-Creating with the Divine. And animals and horses and spirits came to me in dreams, guiding me. And that really peaked in my late 20s during my Saturn return, which I didn't even know existed then. And I was in that cocoon of healing where I went very deep into my own healing and received messages that I was to shift my path and offer healing services in the modalities that were able to heal me at a very deep level. So not just my condition or what we call what happens to us or what we acquire, but also my constitution. So the modalities that I was guided to went very deep and were able to transform and heal me on the cellular level. And those modalities were Reiki applied every day, consistently, for very, very deep healing and regeneration. And macrobiotic healing foods, again, a very comprehensive healing program to help the body heal the deepest level. And then on a personal level, self-reflection, but you could consider it holistic coaching and counseling, when sharing it to others. And then later on, when I was well enough to do yoga and to participate more in life, I got involved in Bikram yoga. So those are my 4 pillars. And 3 of those modalities became my Apona healing method. So I've been supporting clients through very serious chronic illnesses for the last 25 years, and help them really reclaim their health and then regain that energy that they lose. That's a struggle to maintain when your body is using up so much energy for chronic illnesses. And then to get to know themselves, refine their power, cultivate that relationship with who you are, and how is it best for you to navigate through life. And then that's true empowerment, ultimately. And then horses came in about the same time as I started offering holistic health services to clients. And we rescue horses from slaughter and give them a forever home, a forever sanctuary home here, providing them the opportunity to rejuvenate and shine their light as pillars of light, of healing. And we now offer, and we have been offering for some time, equine assisted therapy and equine healing retreats. So that's how the holistic healing, the holistic coaching extends into the healing with the horses and the equine therapy.
Thank you for the outline. I was a bit curious about the horses, because it's not something that right away. What are you doing with that? I mean, of course, there is healing with dogs, there's healing with horses, there's healing with all sorts of animals. But what exactly do I have to imagine? And so I went to your website and checked out your Apona Healing Ranch and the Apona coaching, and tried to get an idea of what you're doing there. And what stuck with me is that apparently the magnetic field of the heart, to make this clear for people who might not have read about it or heard about it, the heart, also the human heart, has a magnetic field that extends much farther than we would think, and also has an impact on the environment. And it seems that the magnetic field of the heart of horses is 5 times as large as that of human beings. And I think on your website you say just being in the presence of a horse and standing by the side of a horse can have a healing power on human beings. Would you like to elaborate a bit on that?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, the Heart Math Institute did a study years ago and measured the electromagnetic field of a horse's heart, and that's how we're aware that it's 5 times larger than a human. So they also did a study at the time where they put like electrodes or equipment on humans to measure their response when they're standing in the presence of a horse. And they could really measure, they had lower blood pressure, decreased levels of anxiety and stress, and all the indications of balancing oneself out and being able to regenerate. And for those of us who are honored to care for horses, when we go out to clean the stables and do work with them, not necessarily riding them, but just caring for them, you instantly feel really regenerated. You may be tired, you may be frustrated or cranky, or might be very cold, and you're like, oh, I have to go out there, I don't want to go out. But once you get out there with them, it's like all your problems dissolve, all the stress goes away. And everybody feels that when they're just working on the farm and working around the horses or being with the horses. So what we do in our equine healing retreats and equine assisted therapy is what's called more Taoist psychotherapy, where we cultivate stillness, silence, and our own presence with the horses. So very much like a meditation. And then we support clients through their own process of self-discovery when they're standing with the horses, and what are they feeling, what is being activated within them to bring awareness to for their own healing.
Thank you very much for outlining this fascinating work with the horses. I'm sure most people haven't really heard about this sort of therapy so far. But now I would really like to know a little bit more about your experience of life-changing messages you received that then prompted you on a new path. So let's get back to that and just tell me a bit how that happened. When did you start to notice that there's another path, another line of work waiting for you? How did that come about?
Well, it was all a process really of co-creating with the divine. I finished my master's degree, and I had many wonderful job offers at the United Nations. I had a dream job offer in Manhattan on Park Avenue with NGO, environmental based NGO that combined everything I love. So policy, science, and public outreach. And there was a feeling within me that I just couldn't do it. And it was really strange because I had everything set up. I loved what I did. It's not like I didn't love what I did. And I had these great, perfect job offers, and I just couldn't do it. And I knew that there was something else. And it was really hard. It was really hard to not accept those job offers. And but I didn't know what I was going to be doing. And so I knew I had to complete the healing of my chronic illnesses, and that this was the time to do it. So I was in Manhattan, and I went back home to Toronto, and I started an intensive macrobiotic healing program. And through the high vibration frequency of the foods, I started having dreams. And this is why I really know the power of the principle, the universal principle, everything is energy. Because food is energy, not just calories, but it's frequency, it's vibration plus nutrition. And so when I started the macrobiotic healing program, I didn't have any plan to develop myself spiritually or to expand my consciousness. I just wanted to get better. And then I thought, well, I'll just go back to my policy work, right? Or my therapy work with clients. And I started having these epic dreams telling me that one of them said I was a sister of horses. And I didn't think about horses. I had no, passion to be with horses. I loved horses and I loved all animals, but I didn't even think about it. And this is the power when we co-create with the divine, is that messages will come to us that we hadn't even thought of. And so this is how my whole life started to change. And so I just wrote the dreams down and went back, to heal myself, to cook and to eat my food. And then I had dreams telling me that I should be doing Reiki. And that came in through spiritual guidance and divine intervention. And I was still, even when I started doing professional services, I thought it'd be a hobby. And I thought, oh, in a year, I'll go back to my policy work. And after 3 years, I realized that this is my, bigger mission, my bigger purpose. And I loved it as well. It's not like I didn't love it. So it was sort of like me having to choose between the better of two good things. When I was a kid, it was the expression, you have to choose between the lesser of two evils. But as you evolve, right, and as you connect, with higher vibration, more and more positive things come in for you to choose from. But it was a really challenging time for my spirit guides to convince me to go into the healing arts. And I would have epic dreams almost every night, really urging me in that direction. But I didn't resist it out of logic. I just didn't consider that pathway, right? I just didn't really, I thought, well, that's nice to get those messages, but I have these great jobs waiting for me. And so that's really how it all started. And even my very first client I met at a spiritual bookstore. And when we sat there in the reading section with the big comfy chairs, and he was quite experienced in his own healing and personal development. And he said, well, I'd like to work with you. And I said, well, I don't offer services. And he goes, oh, but you do now.
That's a great story to get a client, because the client tells you that he's going to be your client,
Well, yeah. And then I said, I didn't have a treatment table for the Reiki. I had nowhere to practice. I didn't have insurance. He goes, no problem. He goes, I will wait for you. And about 6 or 8 weeks later, we connected and started working together. And I just offered what I could, right? I didn't think about anything else. I just offered where I was at, what my abilities were, what my knowledge was. And then for the next almost 25 years, it was word of mouth. And I grew a very successful practice specializing in helping clients with serious health conditions, and also in personal development as well. So many of the clients that I would work with, when they would resolve their chronic illnesses, we continue to work together in holistic coaching.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect example for how things come to you to show you where to go. That's amazing. What age were you at when this started, when you turned down the dream jobs and focused on the healing, and the dreams were coming?
That was my late 20s. So I had finished my master's degree, and it was actually a 3-year degree where we had work term opportunities in there. It was very much like a PhD. We had oral exams and everything. It was a fantastic program. And then I decided to take 2 years off to heal my chronic illnesses, had all these wonderful job offers. And then it was really around the age of 29 in my Saturn return that I was inundated like nightly with dreams that are more clear and more powerful than the real world. Like this is, and I didn't try, I didn't have any intention, but just because I was healing myself at the constitutional level, deep in my cells, I became a clear channel for the energy. And I remember I had one dream once that my greatest mentor and coach and teacher, Michio Kushi, the macrobiotic forefather, who I went to see in Boston for my own healing for the macrobiotic dietary guidelines and lifestyle guidelines. He came to me in a dream once and he said, turn off your music because I can't get the messages to you. So when I was very frail, and I actually died twice. I was so weak, and I've had hundreds or thousands of out-of-body experiences that I could talk about, but
Next time.
that's right. It was in the cocoon of healing, my cocoon of healing, my late 20s, that all this unfolded for me. And I used to like to listen sometimes to the house dance music, like the trance music that you dance to, because we used to go dancing in nightclubs in my 20s. And I thought it was very relaxing. But Michio Kushi said, turn off that music in the dream so I can communicate with you more clearly. So it was a phenomenal time. It was really a phenomenal time. And I had no idea what, like, where I was going to end up, what I was going to do. I just knew I couldn't go back, but the path forward wasn't clear. So I had to have faith and trust in the divine messages.
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to ask you. As you decided to first work on your health and to withdraw for 2 years. Um, how did you make a living? I mean, that's, I think, a thing that it's not only my theme and topic, but a lot of people who want to make a change or feel compelled to make a change are worrying about and thinking about. So how did you do that?
Well, I had to do it very carefully. I was a student and I had always worked. So I had a small business, putting myself through university. And luckily, I didn't have any student debt. So it was, some months I just didn't know how I was going to pay the rent. But I didn't focus on that. I focused on my healing and managing a small amount of money that I needed to survive and to live. And not being attached to the fear. I had no fear. I just knew that I was going to heal, and I didn't know what was going to happen as I came out of my healing. But I just didn't. I didn't let the lack of money stop me from doing what I needed to do.
Oh yeah, that's great mental strength, actually, that you just had that naturally.
Well, I started, as I said, at the age of 10, and with what I call Taoist non-attachment, where it's not detachment, but where you stay very centered, or as I like to say, centered, connected. So centered in your core energy, connected in your power, your essence, and conscious of your thoughts and your goals and your beliefs, your patterns. And so you stay very centered, connected, and conscious, like the Buddha in the middle of the burning inferno, with your inner knowing that you're going to go forward regardless of the circumstances. And I learned that at the age of 10. And so I've had a lot of challenges, in life. That could be many podcasts, but that is how I learned to rely on my inner strength, my inner knowing, and having faith in the relationship with the spirit world, with the divine, because we're more than just material beings. We're highly evolved. Each person on the planet is a highly evolved spiritual being that can manifest in their own stream of consciousness and inner knowing when we accept the flow. So it's when we have worry and fear, we create resistance to that flow, and that resistance is stress. The stress is like a wall, of like a barrier that prevents us from being in our flow. And we can have healthy stress, but then we want to release it. So I teach clients in my coaching Taoist on attachment, or learning to be centered, connected, and conscious, so that you become the captain of your ship regardless of the circumstances of life.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting similarity to what I've done during the past 1 or 2 years, because I've started out in 2020, and I've learned a lot myself because things weren't going my way. I mean, things are still not going my way on the material side at the moment, but the interesting thing is that I have never been as relaxed in as bad a situation before, because I've learned so much during the past 2 years to actually, not let myself be sucked into this panic mode too much, and to pull myself out of it. And but I think it's probably much easier when you start learning it at 10 than when you start learning it at 40 plus, and that's intriguing. How did you come across the Tao and this sort of teachings at that early age?
Well, I didn't know that it was Taoism. And when I came out of my cocoon of healing and I started going to social gatherings and meeting new people who are more spiritually conscious or on a spiritual path, out of the blue, again, messages from the divine, people would say to me, well, you're a Taoist. And I was like, well, I don't know what that is. Macrobiotic theory is very closely aligned with Taoist philosophy. So there's an overlap there. But again, the very first book I read that I remember changing my life was The Power of Positive Thinking, which is more mindset, more mindset tools. But mindset helps you develop that relationship, right, with the power of intention and with you as a creator of your own life. And then we can evolve into more universal principles, always using mindset. I mean, I still use mindset today, and mindset tools, but then using universal principles to help you connect at a deeper level with the flow of your soul. Because we're evolving out of an intellectually based paradigm that's been around really for 13,500 years, if you want to think about it that way. And we're going to 2100 when the North Star aligns with the North Pole and heralding the next 13,500 years of light. So it's a very challenging, powerful, transformative time to be living on the planet. And it's so great that you have a show like this to help people become aware that transformation is underway. And if they would like to evolve and heal and grow, then there's so much support and they're not alone in doing that. And so many people are shedding layers from imprints, from their childhood or from past lives. And we need to know we're not alone, and that there are so many wonderful support systems and techniques and coaches that can help them return to their wholeness and their ultimate empowerment. But it is a time of releasing the intellect, keeping the intellect as one of the pillars. So we're mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, but integrating it into our path forward.
Yeah, and not having it rule everything. That's the interesting thing in this context, because one of my struggles is that because of my upbringing, I'm kind of a warrior, not a warrior, but a very warrior. So we tend to look ahead, and I think I actually traced it back recently, that I think it has to do with the generation of World War II. And my grandparents' generation, that they passed down an extreme need for security to my parents, and their generation passed it down to us, and that's and also created it for themselves, and so brought us up in that environment, and so it's very hard for us to tolerate insecurity, and has to be learned. The question that comes up for me, because I'm looking at my situation against my background, is: did you have in your family background people who were living according to Taoism, or how did you come across that at the age of 10?
Well, no, my family was very similar to what you described. My parents had been through the war, and my grandmother used to hide pieces of bread in her apron in case there was a food shortage or famine. And when my father came to Canada, he's Ukrainian, after the war, there was no what we call OHIP, like hospitalization insurance. There was no Social Security. So they were very, very aware of creating material security, right? This is what we're going to differentiate for well-being, right? For well-being, because they know what can happen. You can lose everything in war. And so I grew up with that. You should be a dentist, you should be a lawyer, all of these. So my family was always very upset when I made choices along the way that did not provide material security for me, that appeared to not provide. So I started studying psychology, zoology, animal behavior, instead of doing an MBA that they wanted me to do. And then I switched to environmental science, which was a disaster for them, because they thought, oh my goodness, you're gonna be on a boat in the middle of nowhere without a job or something, right? And then it was even a bigger disaster for them when I went into the healing arts 30 years ago. How did you even make a living doing Reiki or coaching or healing foods 30 years ago. So I had to cultivate from the age of 10 my own inner security. I had to develop a deep relationship with myself, my inner knowing, to navigate through very difficult life circumstances, always from a perspective that I will get to the next level. And I was very fortunate in that way that my biggest challenges were physical. And yes, sometimes mental, emotional aspects can affect physical, but not always. And in my case, it was physical, and I had the mental clarity and the emotional balance to cultivate, as I said, relationship with myself, for myself, by myself. And that created inner security. And this is the foundation of Taoist non-attachment, or achieving one's potential during these changing times. Because as we've mentioned, we're going through a global, paradigm shift of human consciousness, and we're going to feel insecure. I mean, that's just how it's going to be. But it's okay, because when we cultivate, when we heal and grow and evolve and cultivate relationship with self, you always have yourself, and you will always find a solution. My mentor and teacher, Michio Kushi, he always said, for every problem, there is a solution. Otherwise, it wouldn't appear for you to solve. So sometimes you have to have the mind of Sherlock Holmes to find your specific path, your specific solution for your specific circumstance or goal. And there is always, always opportunity to transform and change your life, even if you're sick and bad like I was, even if you have no money like I had. Like, it doesn't matter, you can still go forward.
If I understood that right, that means that due to your illnesses and your physical problems, you kind of had to find a way to deal with that, and that brought you into this attitude of finding your inner strength and being with yourself, and knowing there's always something you can rely on, even if the circumstances are not great. So that's basically what kind of prevented you then to take over the attitude of your family, right? To just go for I need security, and this is all frightening and so on, because you had to find this resource in yourself.
Well, 100%, but I would have loved to have the material security.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, that would have been great. But if it's not there temporarily, it's not there. But absolutely, that's how. Even just the nature of my conditions, they couldn't be easily diagnosed or labeled. So I was constantly having the mind of Sherlock Holmes without realizing it, because I wouldn't accept degenerating. I was not going to accept a life of decline. I said to myself, I came to the planet to be fully alive and to have a full experience of living. I didn't come to the planet to be struggling with surviving physically and be half alive. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's, I call it the chronic pain drain. Like, when you're in chronic pain, you're constantly drained. Like, all your core energy is going into survival, and you can get by, and you can do certain things, but you're not able to blossom, because you're in survival mode or constantly managing. And I just wouldn't accept that. I said, I'm not going to live the rest of my life like that. And so it took me 20 years, from the age of 10 to the age of 30. But I was always in the process of trying to discover how to heal my chronic health conditions. And in that process, I was self-discovering. I was discovering who I was and my own inner power.
Mm-hmm. So when you set out to heal yourself in your late 20s, that took you 2 years, 3 years, or how long did it take you to heal? And did you completely heal?
Yeah, so it was a process. So from the age of 10 to my late 20s, I was doing different things all the time and trying different things, and they were all good. It's not like anything I tried, whether it was medical based or whether it was natural, holistically based. They were all good, supportive things. But because I was born with deformed organs, they didn't go deep enough. And I remember Michio, my mentor teacher, saying to me at our first consultation, that I would, if I stayed on the path that I was on, I would never know true health in this lifetime because my healing and recovery would be so slow. So it was then I had done many, many wonderful modalities, which helped me, obviously get to where I was. And then I had the dreams and telling me to go deep into Reiki, but Reiki done in a therapeutic way, like 2 hour sessions once or twice a day, for a few months, is very different than having a Reiki once a month for relaxation or rebalancing. They're both good. They just have a different role and effect. And same with the food. It's very different having a bowl of miso soup, once a week versus, making 7 or 8 medicinal dishes a day that are designed to, heal different organs and systems in the body. So from the point of when I started my deep healing of macrobiotic healing foods and Reiki, it was about a year and a half. It was about a year and a half. And in the beginning, my body purged so much and was realigning on such a deep level. I needed to sleep 16 hours a day. So I would sleep at night and then I would basically cook and I would chew my food for 4 hours. And then I would bring in the healing modalities. And then I would fall asleep in the afternoon for sometimes 2 to 4 hours. And that was the cocoon of healing. And that was a phenomenal, phenomenal gift of life-changing opportunity for me. And when I came out of that cocoon, then I was able to be a butterfly. But if you don't give yourself that opportunity when you're ready, then you'll always struggle, and each person has to tune into themselves, right? When is the time, or do you even have to go that deep? Maybe you don't have to go that deep to get to where you want to go. But then that's what I specialized in when I came out of my cocoon of healing, with the guidance, of the divine animals and spirits that guided me to help people who were wanting to do deep transformation.
Thank you for explaining that in more detail, because I think it's very interesting to hear how intense that was when you say it was 1.5 years in this cocoon, to get an idea of how intense you were working on yourself, and also giving yourself the rest you needed and all that. Because I think usually when you learn Reiki, I did learn Reiki 1 a few years ago. For certain reasons, it's a story of its own, and I'm still using it here and there on myself mainly. But you usually you learn to do 20 to 30 minutes on someone, and that's just a completely different measure of time that you've used on that, and intensity. So that's very interesting to get a feeling, of what this can do for you if you do it with a certain intensity, and also make time for it. Which is, I think, something we are all struggling with when we find we need something like rest and recharging and all that. To carve out a few days, isn't that easy, actually. At least it's what I've found. So I think that's an important thing to think of and to be aware of, that it just also needs time and attention. But I wanted to get back to the dreams. So you said before the dreams were clearer than normal reality. So can you describe that a bit more? How these dreams came to you, and how they felt, and how they looked, and how you perceived them?
Well, yeah, I didn't have any intention to have dreams. As I said, my goal was to just get myself physically well enough so I could go back to my policy work, and I would just fall asleep and I would have dreams and different types of dreams. So I realized at that time I had about 7 different types of dreams. And then I realized in some teachings there are 7 levels of consciousness. So I have had thousands of out of body experiences and communication with the spirit world. And I often joke, sometimes people write an amazing book about one experience, and I had them every day, like when I was in my cocoon of healing, and I still have them. I had a dream in January that one of my horses who ascended, he came to me and said a new horse is going to be joining us at the sanctuary, and it all started manifesting 2 or 3 days later. And you know, the dreams and the spiritual guidance keep you moving forward. So often I'm not quite clear, or I think I'm not ready, or it's like, oh, I haven't built that new barn or pasture. I'm not ready for the horse. But they know you're ready. They know that you're going to manifest it. You know, they're always a little bit ahead of us, right? And pushing us forward. But I've had out of body dreams where I was in layers of frequency of color and moving through color and being spoken to during that time by white beings. I've had dreams when I was in my deep healing where these beautiful, tall white beings, sometimes they'd present then as horses, and then sometimes they'd present as other beings. And they were actually doing energy healing on my organs. And they would take my organ out of my body and show me the organ, and then send it white light, and then put the organ back in my body. And so I've had I've had dreams where I am a spirit in people's bodies. And just like in a movie where you would travel through, you know, the blood and into the organs. I've had dreams of just being consciousness. So, and those are spectacular. Those are the dreams when you never want to come back. And and I had no form, and I had no attachment to the earth. I was just consciousness. So after having thousands of out of body experiences and those sorts of uh, sort of spiritually evolved dreams, when I came out of the cocoon of healing, my whole life changed. Like I knew that I was here to create a foundation for the future for others. Everything I do, I think about 2100, that I am creating a foundation here at my sanctuary and vibrationally, right, with the work that I do, to help people heal, grow, and evolve, and the animals. And however that's meant to unfold, it's meant to unfold because I know I'm an eternal being. We're all eternal beings, and life will continue on after this incarnation. So that's part of the Taoist non-attachment, that I can be in flow. I can be in a flow state, because partly because I experience that in the out of body experiences and dreams, and I bring that with me. So sometimes you wake up and you don't know where you are for a few seconds, and then you have to get reacquainted. Oh, that's my bedroom wall, and that is I'm back again.
That's actually what it's my experience when I move houses or apartments. I've moved quite a bit in my life, and the first 3 or 4 weeks when you wake up, you're like, where am I? You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, so did you have any sort of experience of that kind before you went into your healing cocoon?
Well, I was always had dreams since I was probably before 10, but nothing as consistently and as powerfully. And of course, I mean, over those years from the age of 10, let's say, to 29, I was working on myself and was releasing the intellectual control and judgment, and all the things that we talked about in terms of being raised in families that rightly so valued and honored at least basic material security, right? I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, that's a good thing to instill in your children. But then there is something greater than that, right, as well. So it was, I always had dreams, but as I said, not to the extent, and the messages weren't as powerful and clear, maybe because I wasn't as good a receiver of the energy, but also the urgency probably wasn't there. I was meant to shift, completely change my life in my Saturn return, right? And I would have died if I hadn't done it. I did die twice, and I went through the tunnel of light. And you were saying earlier, to make time to rest and to know your capacity and to not burn out and not feel overwhelmed by stress. But when you're dying, you're like, that's it. You're gonna rest, right? Like you're gonna stay still when you're dying, because you don't have the physical ability to do things anymore. And so we don't want to get to that point, but I did. And I went through, I had the life review. I've been through the tunnel of light, and then it was so magnificent and beautiful, you don't want to come back. And then you're jolted back in your body. So that's one of the principles that I learned from myself, was learning to tune into my capacity, energetic capacity. And now I teach that. I've been teaching that with clients for 25 years in my holistic coaching, the capacity principle, to tune into your energy and to not go beyond your present capacity, so you don't deplete your core energy and get burned out.
Yeah, that's really important work, I think. Yeah, that's I think many people in the coaching world have been there or nearly there, and then learned, oh, that's not really the way. I think most people I've met who are doing coaching and healing and things like that have somehow been at the point where they've overstretched either their physical or their mental capacity, or both, and then learned from it that you can't stay on that path. So that's quite interesting. I think we really need at least one interview on all these things that are utterly fascinating and very much very close to what I'm interested in personally. I think a very important point also is, which is why I'm doing this little video series now, to explain to people why I have come to the conclusion that death is not the end. Because where I come from, in intellectual circles, people usually cling more to the materialistic paradigm, which is not proven at all. I was always looking to people who were a bit like me, coming in this intellectually, analytically, with doubts and everything, and then had experiences that convinced them otherwise. And so I'm trying to explain to people who may be in that situation, in the situation I was before, how I came to my conclusions, so they can, digest it intellectually. And I'm absolutely fascinated by all these near-death and out-of-body experiences, because sometimes you get also so much wisdom is revealed, and so we definitely should talk about that at another time. But you already did the lead over to your therapy work, and I think you have brought something today that is practical for our viewers, about the 7 steps that you have developed, and everything else about the horses people can read in the chapter in Evolving on Purpose from 30th August onwards. It comes out on 30th August. We will also, of course, drop a link to your website in the description of this video, and your bio and everything. So the 7 steps.
The 7 steps to finding greater purpose and fulfillment by co-creating with the divine are my own. It's my own self-discovery in my own journey of healing that we've talked about. But especially, I mention it very briefly in the chapter that we talked about the divinity of horses in the book Co-Creating, Evolving on Purpose, Co-Creating with the Divine. And I'm going to share, I'm just going to read read the paragraph that highlights them, and then I'll go through the 7 steps. And it was through my connection with a very special horse named Trigger, who initiated me into a greater world of spirits and guidance. He came to me in dreams, and I share that story in my chapter. So here's the paragraph. I had listened to the messages. I honored the urgency of my spirit and took aligned actions. I felt the fullness of my emotions. I centered in my power. I embraced faith and inner knowing. And in so doing, I was guided to the high spiritual being who would heal me as much as I would heal him. So there I'm talking about my horse Trigger, who was coming to me in dreams and led me on my path of healing with horses and rescuing horses. So from my experience, the 7 steps are: first, listen to the messages. And these messages are all around us. We just have to be open to receiving them and notice the patterns. So maybe you see a feather, dropping. Maybe you see on the TV or the internet something that's familiar to you, or like maybe an animal. Like I often see a fox, and the fox is one of my main spirit totems. Maybe it's just a thought that keeps coming up, but we always have communication with the spirit world because we're spiritual beings, right? So it's an aspect of self that we haven't valued, which is the 2nd step, which is to honor and value the importance of your spiritual self, of the messages from the divine. And when we honor and value them, then we start to have relationship with that. We start to connect to our divinity, ourselves, to our wholeness, right? Rather than just being intellectual, we're connecting with all aspects of ourselves. And then the 3rd step is to really feel the fullness of the emotions when you hear the messages and take time to value them. And it's the emotional activation that helps us connect to that inner knowing. And this takes a bit of practice, and these are by no means the only steps. I mean, these are more a general framework from which anyone could start anywhere to listen to their divine self, their higher self, and utilize that for your own guidance. And then, of course, that evolves into the 4th step, which is to center in your power, to feel that connection, as we talked about, that you are a high spiritual being in a physical body, here to have your best experience in any circumstance. And you're meant to be here. So whatever challenge that you're facing, as we talked about, there is a solution, but maybe it's for you, right, to have the journey to uncover that. And when we connect with our inner state of being, that inner security, that is our power. That's our power is our connection to the divine, or the infinite energy in the universe. And then within that connection, what is the clarity that's coming? What is it that you feel is being guided to you or said to you? And nobody else needs to hear it. Nobody else is going to see it or judge it. This is all about cultivating relationship with yourself and your inner knowing. And then embracing. So then the 5th step is embracing the faith in that inner knowing. And it takes a bit of practice. You know, you can have different experiences that validate these 7 steps, this process. And then the 6th step is to act on it. So whether the action is something obvious. So in my story, in the chapter, I had to act in ways I had never done before to save my horse, or the horse that I was connected to, which I didn't know was my horse till later, from being slaughtered. I mean, horse slaughter is unfortunately very real, and we obviously do not support horse slaughter. So I had to take action. I had to find some aspect within myself to grow and find solutions to save his life, right? So those are what we call aligned actions that were healing for me as much as I was healing him. Or the action could just be a greater awareness of how you want to live your daily life through the different actions you take in your daily life. And then the 7th step is to trust the process that's unfolding, because you're in a flow state. You are naturally, you know, living on the earth in a field of energy, and you're being guided to the best pathway for you. And as you trust the process, you will create miracles that are unbeknownst to you. So I always say there is no insignificant action. So it doesn't matter sometimes if you don't have resources, or if you can't go and, you know, save a horse from slaughter yourself personally, but there are little actions each of us can take. We could pray, you know, we can donate $5, you know, in the case of helping a horse. There's lots of little actions that we can do that create miracles. And we don't always know those miracles. We don't always know how our positive thoughts and our even small positive actions create a ripple effect that can save someone's life or change the world. So that's the trusting in the process. So those are the 7 general steps to help one co-create with the divine.
And make big life changes and master challenges. Yeah, that's great. That's basically the path you also described that you went through when you made your big life change. That's a really great point to close on. However, there's one thing, I just marked it down here, that you mentioned in passing before, that I would just like to ask as a little side path to look at. And that's, you mentioned the Lord of the Rings. And that resonates with me because when I was 12, I read the Lord of the Rings. And I loved the Lord of the Rings, and I waited for years for them to make a film of it. And I think you said that gave you inspiration. Is that something you can summarize how the Lord of the Rings made an impact on you?
Well, we'd have to have another 2-hour conversation about that, but I'd be happy to touch on it. Lord of the Rings to this day is one of my greatest guides. The teachings in it are so multidimensional. The quotes, when I was in my cocoon of healing and I was too weak to even walk. I mean, I would have to hold on to the walls to get to the kitchen and sit on a chair and try to cook something. I created from my bed, I created a collage of quotes and little black postcards with images that I had picked up somewhere. And so many Lord of the Rings quotes kept me going from at that time, and inspired me and motivated me and helped me remember who I was. And the different characters in Lord of the Rings all spoke to me in different ways. It wasn't just one character. But to this day, one of my greatest lazy pleasures is to pull out Lord of the Rings and watch it on the video. And there have been times, there was a time I was healing on an incredible healing journey with one of my horses that had a mystery condition. And there was an excerpt from Lord of the Rings that I played as a mantra, as a mindset over and over and over and over again to get me focused, to get out there and help her heal, whether it was plus 40 degrees or minus 42 degrees Celsius, and stay on my soul mission with her. It is a phenomenal book. I think I read that Lord of the Rings is the second most widely read book on the planet, second to the Bible.
I just recently learned that, by the way, I find that fascinating. I worked with quotes too in my teens, different quotes, but I had a collection of quotes that I would go through in turn, one quote per day for mindset. But I just recently learned that, as you know, Tolkien also was a philologist, so he knew how to edit a text. And I just recently learned that he kind of channeled or was in a trance state, an altered state of consciousness in any case, when he wrote the Lord of the Rings and generally his stories, and then he would go and work on this text like a philologist and basically edit it in the way you would edit a manuscript that is 1,000 years old. And that was really fascinating to me to learn about, because I could relate to that a little bit, and it gave me an idea.
They're usually Lord of the Rings fans, but it's such a spiritual, there's quotes. I have quotes on my website, one of my websites, about the power of rest. You know, it seemed to them they did little but eat and drink and rest and walk among the trees. And that was enough. That's a Lord of the Rings quote, right? Like, I have Lord of the Rings quotes everywhere still. And that's part of the power of mindset. When I was going through my cocoon of healing, I put quotes to keep me focused and on track and inspired and motivated over every light switch, over my sink, over every doorway. So everywhere I went, I was by myself. I had to rely on myself. I had a message coming back to me to how to stay on track. And that's free. That doesn't cost any money. To pull out quotes, put it on your mirrors, put it over your sinks, put it over your light switches. And my favorite quote at the time was, "If it is to be, it is up to me." Like, this is it. Like, you have to do this, Lidia. And then all the other quotes and Lord of the Rings, it is so layered and so deep. And like the Battle of Helm's Deep, even the movie did such a good job at the Battle of Helm's Deep. When Aragorn, you know, they have to stand in front of all those orcs, right? And then you remember your power, right? And they're standing in the rain in the dark, and it's just phenomenal. It's just a phenomenal. And the beauty of Lord of the Rings, why it's lasted so long, and it's reached, it's because it was channeled, because it's spiritual teachings. When you just shared how you heard Tolkien channeled, I got chills, I got goosebumps, because it's true. It's a phenomenal teaching that is done in a mythology that helps us remember who we are.
Thank you very much, Lydia. So we have this book coming out on the 30th of August, which is published by Katie Carey's publishing house, Soulful Valley. It's really hard for me to pronounce. Soulful Valley. Okay, Katie Carey's publishing house, Soulful Valley. A magical volume with a lot of chapters of a lot of interesting people who have fascinating stories to tell. And one of them is The Divinity of Horses by Lidia Kuleshnyk. And we hope many of you are going to buy this right away. Buy it on the day. It's really affordable on Kindle, Amazon Kindle, and you can push it up in the ranks, and then more people will see it.
At 9 a.m. your time.
9 a.m. in Europe. So I hope many people will be eager to read more of your story, which is different from what we have talked today. And yeah, I thank you very much for this interview. It was great to have you. Very enjoyable, very interesting. I could go on and on, but we can select other times for other topics. I'm really glad we came together to have this interview, and people who want to know more about your work and maybe also come to one of your retreats can find the website address in the description below. And yeah, I hope you'll have a beautiful day, and we'll meet again for an interview. And I can't wait to read your chapter in Evolving on Purpose. Thank you very much, Lidia.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor and pleasure to be with you here today. And I'm looking forward to reading your chapter as well on Evolving on Purpose, Co-Creating with the Divine. And here we are, co-creating together, right? With everybody joining us as a collective light.
Thank you. And until next time, see you soon.
Until next time. I'm excited for next time as well. Thank you so much.